I'm Jack. I'm a product implementation specialist at Cookie Information, and today we shall chat about how to create a killer consent banner. Killer in the sense that it will contain everything you need in terms of being compliant and what you need to do. I can't, however, vouch for my killer design skills, so those remain to be seen. Anyway, let's move on, and I need to click. There we go. So who is this webinar for? Well, it's for Cookie Information customers and non-customers who are looking to style their consent banner and make it the best it can be. So you'll learn about making the pop-up fit with your brand, increasing your consent rates, as well as what they are, and a bit about how to make custom templates if you so wish. I have the same thing twice, never mind. If you're not actually a customer yet, then of course you do get a 30-day free trial. If you go to app.cookieinformation.com, you can sign up for a 30-day free trial and get started with your own consent banner. So our agenda for today, we'll start off with talking about GDPR and CCPA a little bit. So what exactly it means for your consent banner, and what you need to do, and how they relate exactly to consent banners or privacy notices, as they're otherwise known as. We'll also talk about consent rates, and we will also have a chat about the choice of pop-up. There are a few to choose from, so you have a bit of a range. Then we'll move on to why styling your template is important. Then we'll move on to how to actually style and make changes to your template that you picked from earlier. And then finally, we'll do a quick walkthrough of, or rather an introduction walkthrough of how to make your own custom template if you fancy giving it a go. So GDPR, yes, essentially personal data has to be handled in a lawful way while ensuring its security, privacy, and confidentiality. What does it have to do with cookies? Well, cookies particularly aren't mentioned, but they do relate because sometimes they do process personal data. So they get covered by GDPR. And that does sound very legalese, so I shall break it down into simpler terms. More to the point, before I do that, you also have to process the personal data that you gain from the consent once you have consent. So that's where the banner plays its part. You can't suddenly collect the data and then ask afterwards. It has to be before you collect it. So what this actually means for your consent banner is that the user has to consent before any cookies except necessary are set in their browser. The description for cookies and the data you collect and what you do with it and how it's stored has to be clearly laid out. So the purpose of each cookie and what it collects must be accurate. The website visitor must be able to decline cookies they don't wish to consent to. More importantly, it must be as easy to decline and withdraw or update your consent, so go back and change it, as it was to accept them in the first place. So you can't make it particularly difficult for them to change their mind. There's also a right to be forgotten, and the consent they give has to be documented and stored for 5 years. If you're already a Cookie Information customer, then we're the ones documenting and storing that consent. So CCPA, I don't know how many Europeans we have in here that happen to have US visitors to their websites, or how many people from the US we have. But the CCPA, or the California Consumer Privacy Act, is the essential American equivalent of GDPR, which has a very similar set of rules. So again, like GDPR, you have to gain consent before you process any personal data, and of course, give an option to opt out. And a quick rundown, the website visitor must be able to know what personal information is collected and how it gets used and shared. They have a right to it being deleted, and they have a right to opt out of the sale of the personal information they have given, And they can't be discriminated against for exercising their rights under CCPA. And that sounds mildly vague, but it essentially means that they must still be able to use your website. So you can't break it deliberately if they decide they don't want to accept cookies. And businesses are required to have a consent banner that informs their visitors of the above points, as well as a privacy policy. So, consent rates. Well, what exactly are they? They are essentially how many website visitors have consented to cookies for each category on your website. It is showing the number of categories for each category, as well as the overall consents, as well as a percentage. And you might think, well, I'll definitely get 100, but that is not the case, because obviously not everyone will accept cookies. And yes, by using a CMP, you obviously get an easy to understand overview of the numbers of consents. So how exactly do they work? Well, like we've already discussed, they are the overall number of consents given. And in the dashboard, you'll see consents for the last 24 hours, if you did like I just did and selected the last day. And yes, you'll see the consent rates for 7 days as part of the basic dashboard, and you can see them for much longer if you have the advanced or premium compliance dashboard. Roughly, well, I say 1 year back, it depends on when we last archived some of the data. If we were to show everything from the very first day that you added a domain, the dashboard would be incredibly slow just because of the sheer volume of data. So occasionally we do archive it, but you will still be able to see a reasonable amount of data back in the past. Okay. So selecting your pop-up template. And as I've written here, your template choice will be influenced by the laws of your country, most likely GDPR or CCPA, if you're in Europe or the US. And so we recommend choosing overlay v2 or v3. Those are our templates that we tend to focus on. But however, you can also, if you visit this link, which I am quite sure I already have up. Yes, here, perfect. In fact, I'm just going to drag the entire thing. If I can drag it, where has it gone? Ah, there we go. So if you head over to templates.cookieinformation.com, then you'll be able to see what each looks like. So we have the CCPA, which looks like this. We have the banner, which is just like this, a small box or a box covering the bottom half of the screen. We have overlay v2, which looks like this. And we also have overlay v3. And like I mentioned earlier, with the rules governing consent banners, obviously the reason we focus on these main two is because it's very easy to add a description of what you generally collect and which cookies you use. You can, of course, read more about cookies. So you can see the policy and how to block or delete them, how long they're stored, and so on. And you finally can see the categories of cookies and what is in each. So it's very easy to granularly accept or decline cookies and save your choices. So let me head on back to my PowerPoint. Yes, our most commonly used templates, overlay v2 and v3, because they make it the easiest to comply, essentially. Why is styling your pop-up important? Well, you might be happy with the default styling and leave it as it is, but I'm guessing if you're watching this webinar, then you're not one of those people. But it's useful because you can make it look more like part of your website and that it belongs. And in turn, this can also help you with improving your consent rates, and you potentially get less people just clicking decline all or accepting all cookies in general. And yes, the standard templates look like this once again. Overlay v2 and v3. So, styling. There are a few things you can style about your template. I'm just going to try and move this microphone out slightly so I'm not on top of it. Can everyone still hear me okay? Perfect. Wonderful. Okay, so yes, there are a few things you can change, which is the overall color, the buttons, fonts, which should have been a separate bullet, but seems to have joined the line above, and the shape. But you should always keep accessibility in mind. And you might wonder, well, what exactly is accessibility? So we'll have a quick discussion about that. Accessibility, essentially, or in this particular case, refers to Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG, if you like your acronyms. These are a set of rules that you can use to ensure that your consent banner is still usable and functional by those who happen to have disabilities, if someone is visually impaired or blind. It includes things such as contrast of text, colors being readable, and that the structure of the pop-up follows the correct format, because there's also every chance that they might be using a keyboard or a screen reader. So, most operating systems and browsers will have accessibility functions built in, so you can navigate around the entire page without touching your mouse. So, I've gone too far. Am I missing something? No. Okay, I'm missing a slide. Interesting. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So, yes, with that said, we shall move on to actually styling our pop-up. So, where did my other tab go? What? I'm actually going to close that. Or rather, I will. Oh, I need to end this. I will just need to quickly log in to my other account so you can see what I see. And while that's happening, I shall open the Q&A if you would like to ask any questions. And I just need to browse to my domain that I have added earlier. So it would probably be useful to show you the website that I am styling my pop-up for, which is, oh, I'm going to close that actually. So this is my website. Still in progress. I haven't actually reached my dream of becoming a baker yet, nor are my design skills amazing, but it'll have to do. Small steps. So I have already added my pop-up, and I have already selected overlay v2 as my template, which looks like this. So to do the same for your website, oh, I've got an in-app message from Nishita. Sorry, Nishita, I'll just close that. Yes, so to access your template and change your template within the platform, once you've made your choice, you simply go to the Change Template button and select your template from here. So for me, because I changed some text, it's technically custom, so I'm going to leave that alone. But you'll be able to view the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript of your pop-up under the advanced settings. And I actually wouldn't recommend to try and style your pop-up in here, because it is quite nice to get some visual feedback as you work. So you can see the changes that you're making and that what you're trying to do has worked correctly. For that reason, I would actually recommend using something like CodePen. CodePen is free. You just have to make an account, and then you can copy the HTML, CSS, and the JavaScript of your template into here, into these 3 boxes. Just going to move this over here. And then in the case of CodePen, because obviously we're now outside the cookie information platform, you will have to add one last thing right at the bottom, which is the function show cookie banner, because then it will appear correctly within CodePen. So let's get started. Well, I notice that if I close this, I have my logo color, and I have this little divider in pink. So I think I'm going to maybe base my design something around those colors. We'll see. So let's do a quick walkthrough of the CSS. Actually, no, before that, let's add my logo. So you can add your logo for your website in the JavaScript functions. And if I scroll back up, whoops, if I scroll back up, where am I going to put myself? I will put myself just here. So if I scroll down slightly, you'll see there is a comment here saying that this is the logo function. So I can paste my logo in here. Yes, okay. Currently, it just says logo, and that's probably because it hasn't quite loaded properly within CodePen, but it should load perfectly fine on my actual website because the domain is the same. So you'll temporarily have to imagine that my logo exists just here. We don't need the HTML for now, so we are going to expand this box all the way up so that we can focus on our CSS. So in the new templates, or the latest version of the templates, I should say, we have decided to use CSS variables, and a CSS variable is essentially a placeholder. So you can enter your color value here, and it means that rather than remembering the hex code or the RGB code of your colors, you can just pass this variable here on the left-hand side. And this is nice because it means that you don't have to go digging through all of the code in order to change something. You can simply go down this list, and we have comments here explaining what each of them do. So for instance, the main color changes the accept button, which is this one here. The renew button, which you actually can't see in CodePen, but it is this little icon here. The color of the toggles. So when you accept or decline something, that color there. And the category name hover, which is under here. So this hover effect just here. And so on. So we have for the link elements, the color of the text in general. So the text that appears under here, under the heading. Then of course we can move on to the decline button. So the background of the decline button. And then we can also change the color. Color specifically only refers to the text. So what currently is set here, the decline cookies button. Then the hover effect. So when you mouse over it, the color that it changes to. And then finally the footer background, which is the background of the overall pop-up. So I'm thinking I would like to make my pop-up completely white. So I'm going to get rid of this gray up here and up here, which means I need to change my footer background. So I'm going to change this from F6, F6, F6 to just FFF. And you might be wondering, why is there only 3 letters when all of the other variables have 6 letters? The reason for it is if you happen to be choosing a color code that consists of all of the same letters, so DDDDD or 000, You can shorthand it by just adding the first three. So FFF gets translated as F 6 times, or 0 gets translated as 0 6 times, and so on. So that looks like it works. My pop-up is now completely white, and yes, great. Seems like it's gone white everywhere. Perfect. So let's move on to the link color. I am thinking I would like to change my link color from that green. So I'm going to change it to black. So 222 for 222222 should do the trick. Yes, that looks like it worked. Perfect. And then let's move on to the accept button. So as nice as that green is, I think I'm going to change it to my pink. And I have noted down my hex code for my pink divider that we saw over here. And I'm going to paste it in the main color, like so. And if we let this run, perfect, this has now become pink. But of course, we still have the green hover. So we will get to that in just a second. So we need to go a couple down, and I think I'm going to have a slightly darker color for my hover effect. And I'm going to, if you need a darker color, or if you need another color that matches, you can actually just enter the hex code, good tip, into your address bar, and it will bring up a color code picker. It is all in Dutch. That's mostly because I have the Netherlands set as my location currently, so I'll have to ignore that. But you can then pick, say, I don't know, this color here, and then you can copy this, and then you can paste it back in. Just a bit of a time-saving tip. So yes, I'm going to change the hover color of my accept button, which is this one here. So there we go. And if we let it run, it should, yes, that worked. It goes ever so slightly darker when I run my mouse over it. Perfect. So the decline button. I am not the biggest fan of that gray, if I'm perfectly honest. So I'm going to change it. I'm going to have it as a white background. So I just need to find my hex code, which is here. And I'm going to change, of course, the decline color to white. And yeah, I think I will leave the text color. So I'm going to leave that as 0. And then the decline hover, I'll also leave. Yeah, let's do that. Yes, so the other nice thing is that if you're making any changes further than this, so the ones we have specified here at the top, you can also make your own. So in my case, I actually am not, I want a different color for my toggle color. So I'm going to change that because this main color influences both of these, and I fancy a slightly different shade of pink. So I'm going to choose that. So if I search, whoops, if I could type, if I search for, what was it? It was, I think it was this. This one here. So I'm just going to search for this. Perfect. And this is currently set to the same as the main color. So I'm actually going to change this, and I am going to call this toggle color. And then I can copy this variable, and back at the top where we specified the others, where do I want to put it? I am going to put it after my decline. So I'm going to put it in here. So if I make a comment to myself, oops, to change the color, oops, I have autosave on, that's not very smart. Okay, the color of the toggles, and it should be, oops, come on, hang on, there we go. And I would like to paste in, if it would stop reloading, I would like to paste in my hex code for the toggles. So I'm going to choose a slightly different shade of pink and paste it in here. So once this reloads, it should now, yes, perfect, be a slightly different color. And that is pretty much it when it comes to styling your template. Yeah, you of course always have access to the entire HTML and CSS, so you can style it however you like. I'm just going to save this. I'm going to save it, and I shall call it, what am I going to call it? Default overlay v2 updated. Perfect. Okay, and if I now place this on my site, just gonna bring this, should be okay. So all I need to do is, so let's make sure I'm on the correct content solution. I am, perfect. So I'm going to copy in my HTML, my CSS, and finally my JavaScript with my logo. And I need to remove the show cookie banner function because it gets called automatically. And then I can save and publish. And then we need to give it a minute while it does its thing. So I'm going to go back to my presentation and I'm going to open the Q&A. Tom, I'm curious about the content of web page cookie policy for my site. Can this be dynamically generated? Yes, it can. That is something that I will, if you write an email to support@cookieinformation.com, then we can send you all the relevant things to get that sorted. Redfield, can our design team use a more advanced styling, for example, line thickness and font, etc.? Yes, you can. You can use any CSS properties you like. You can go wild, make it as crazy as you like. There are no limits. Okay, and I think I should, if I am so lucky, be able to go back here and have my pop-up updated with my design. Bit slow loading, but okay. Okay, that seems to work. So yes, looks like it did because this has now turned pink. And there's my logo here. Maybe could do a bit of work. I think that's probably what we'll work on next. Yes, so all of our changes have turned up. Wonderful. So the last thing we shall move on to is custom templates. And this is for if you would like to completely and utterly change the default from what it once was. And we do have some quality of life things that make this slightly easier. These are placeholders. So for each thing, how do I explain it? Each part of the pop-up has its own handlebar for each different piece. So we'll walk through those now. So if I wander on over to our support article, we actually have these listed. So it goes through the most important functions. So obviously you need an accept all button, and you need a decline all button, and you need a save settings button. The save settings being if the website visitor changes one of the toggles. I'll just show you here. So if I specifically only select statistic cookies, then this will change to save settings because I'm saving that I only want to select this particular category. Yes, so translations. These are placeholders that cover each portion of the template. So we have the banner heading, the main text, the accept button, viewing the declaration text, declining cookies, about cookies, showing the details, which is the categories that pops down, hiding the details if you want them to come back up, cookies overview. So yeah, multi-accept. This is mostly for v3 currently, but you can make it into your own. Key name, provider, purpose, all of the details, which you can probably actually see better. Whoops, here. So we have the banner heading, and then we have the main text, and then we have the about cookies and show details, and so on. These you've been seeing placeholders all along, essentially. But if you wanted to go completely wild, shall we say, then you could do probably something like this. So I have taken the overlay template and I have made my background completely the lighter shade of pink. I have made my button pink, everything is pink. And yeah, you can see, same thing. So you still have all the cookie details. I decided I didn't want a toggle as such, but when you click, it gives you a tick. Yeah, that is essentially it. Talking of colors and things like that, actually, before I forget, when you are doing this, you can check to see how WCAG compliant it is. So if I take my accept button here, because it's maybe an odd shade of pink, I'm not quite sure how accessible that is for someone who is visually impaired. So I'm going to check. If I then enter my foreground color, so my text color, which is FFF, and then I enter my background color, which is this one here, and I might need to get rid, I think I do, yeah, I'll just have to copy it in, B34592. Like so, I enter. Okay, almost. So it is mostly compliant. So it's readable, it's a good size, the text. It meets all the AA criteria, but it doesn't quite meet the AAA criteria, which means that I might need to rethink my shade of pink, but I will do that a bit later on. And that is everything. I will happily stick around for some more questions and answers.